My sister told me not to come to Easter because I'm just a mechanic, so I froze her credit, exposed the lies, and waited to watch her fall. Hi there, I'm Deline. My sister told me not to come to Easter because I'm just a mechanic. But that wasn't the part that broke me. The worst part, they used my name to win a scholarship, stole my credit to fund wine nights and flights, and smiled through it all like nothing was wrong. They made me the outsider, then used my silence to rewrite the story without me. You ever feel like the people who should protect you are the ones quietly tearing you down? Yeah, same here. So, I froze her credit card. But that was just the beginning. It was a quiet Thursday evening, and Lexington had just started to feel like spring again. The scent of cut grass still hung faintly in the air as I locked up the garage, wiping my hands on the rag tucked in my back pocket. The last oil change had taken longer than expected. Customer talked too much. The bolts were rusted, and my mind wasn't really in it. But that didn't bother me. I liked the silence that came when the shop doors finally rolled down. No clanking tools, no hum of vengeance, just peace. I'd been thinking about Easter all day. It was less than 2 weeks away, and every year I brought my homemade pecan pie to brunch at my mom's place. It was my thing. Even Travis, my sister Marjorie's boyfriend, had complimented it last year twice. And that man looked like he survived on kale and smugness. So that meant something. I was halfway to my truck when my phone buzzed in my jacket. I expected a parts supplier or maybe one of the guys asking about schedules, but it was from Mom. Hey honey, maybe skip Easter this year. It'll be a smaller gathering. No emojis, no love you, just that. I stared at the message for longer than I should have, thumb hovering. Surely she meant something else. Maybe they were traveling. Maybe Grandma wasn't up for it this year. Or maybe I was being replaced. I didn't text back. Instead, I slid into the driver's seat and sat there, keys unmoved in the ignition until the street lights blinked on around me. Back home, I kicked off my boots and dropped my keys on the counter, the kitchen half lit by the soft overhead light I always forgot to change. I pulled out my phone again, opened the family group chat. Easter brunch planning. I had muted it months ago because they argued about the most absurd things. Do lilies look too funeral? Should we match napkins to table runners? But I always stayed in it. Only this time I wasn't in it. The group name was the same, but my name Deline wasn't listed among the members. I scrolled up. There it was. 3 days ago. A message about the new group being smaller and easier to manage. There were photos of table settings, a pinned note with approved color schemes, and even a dress code. Elegant spring formal. I scrolled until I saw Marjorie's comment. We want to keep it elevated this year. I almost laughed. Elevated? We used to eat ham out of a foil tray and argue about who forgot to bring rolls. Now we're elevated. The ache in my chest built slowly. I wasn't crying, but something cracked like a pipe under too much pressure. Silent, but impossible to ignore. I called Mom. She picked up on the second ring. Oh, Deline. Hi. I got straight to it. Did I do something? A pause. Just long enough to be noticed. No, of course not, sweetheart. It's just this year is more formal. You know, Travis's parents will be there and they're a bit traditional. I rubbed my temple. Mom, I've been to every Easter brunch since I was 12. She sighed. It's nothing personal. We just thought maybe you'd be more comfortable not coming. That's all. Comfortable? I repeated. You know how these things go, she added, her voice syrupy. It's just easier when everything aligns. Align. Like me not being there made the image cleaner. Before I could reply, she said, if you do come, maybe wear something a little more refined, like a dress, not the coveralls. I let that sit in the silence. She filled the gap. You know how first impressions are. I didn't answer. We said our goodbyes, hollow and clipped, and I ended the call with a strange buzzing in my ears. I'd spent the last 6 years building my own business from nothing. Sweat, scraped knuckles, late nights under trucks when everyone else was asleep. And somehow that made me less worthy of a chair at their table. It was almost midnight when I walked into my kitchen and pulled open the recipe folder on my tablet. The pecan pie recipe sat there bookmarked for the last 5 years. I stared at it for a long time. Last Easter, I'd arrived early. The AC had gone out and no one else knew what to do. I fixed it in 15 minutes so Grandma wouldn't melt in her Sunday blouse. No one even asked how I knew how. They just assumed I would. That's what I was to them. Useful. Quiet. Out of the way. I held down the delete icon on the recipe. Confirm. Delete. Yes. I shut off the lights and stood in the dark kitchen, hand resting on the counter. It was just a pie, just a brunch, just a text, but it felt like a final cut, like they had finally said out loud what they'd been whispering behind closed doors. Not one of us. I picked up my phone, turned off the screen, and whispered into the dark, noted. I won't show up where I'm not wanted. The next evening, I found myself driving across town with a small red toolbox rattling on the passenger seat. I'd borrowed it from Dad last month to fix a bent hinge on the back gate and hadn't gotten around to returning it. No one had asked for it back, but after that message from Mom, it felt like the kind of thing they'd use to say I didn't respect their home. So, I figured I'd beat them to the punch. It was just after 6. The light outside had turned golden and sharp, cutting shadows across the porch. As I climbed the steps, their front door was open, the screen door closed, but unlocked. I heard clinking dishes inside, and the soft hum of a kitchen radio. I stepped in quietly, setting the toolbox down by the shoe rack. "Hello," I called out, just loud enough to announce myself. No one answered. Then I heard voices low and clear coming from the kitchen. "I'm just saying," Marjorie's voice floated around the hallway. "If she's there, it's going to change the whole tone." A beat passed. Then Mom answered, gentler, but laced with something else. "We want to keep it simple this year, clean. You know how Travis's folks are." Marjorie exhaled through her teeth. "She's a mechanic, Mom. It's embarrassing. I mean, what's she even going to wear?" Mom chuckled lightly as if that sealed it. I stood frozen by the coat hooks, heart thumping loud enough I was sure they'd hear. Embarrassing. The word landed harder than expected. Not hurtful like a slap. Worse, dismissive, casual. They didn't know I was there, and I didn't wait for them to find out. I backed out as silently as I could, eased the door shut behind me, and walked briskly to my truck. My hands were cold when I gripped the steering wheel. The drive back was a blur. Red lights, radio, headlights too bright. By the time I pulled into my apartment complex, it was already dark. I made myself tea I didn't really want. And while the water boiled, I kept hearing that word in my head, embarrassing. I sat at the kitchen table, the one with the chipped corner I kept meaning to fix, and stared at nothing. It wasn't like I hadn't felt it before, that slow slide into the background whenever Marjorie had company, the awkward half-smiles when Travis talked about careers. But this wasn't subtle. This was deliberate. I thought back to last year to her birthday dinner at the Italian place downtown. Travis had leaned over the candlelit table and asked, "So, what do you do exactly, Deline?" I'd opened my mouth to answer, but Marjorie jumped in. "Oh, she's into automotive stuff, kind of freelance. She's got a lot going on." I remember nodding, smiling, even like it didn't matter. Like I hadn't just rebuilt a transmission that week and signed a lease on my second bay. I let her do that, blur me into something vague, palatable. That was on me. I finished my tea and opened Instagram, half out of habit. Marjorie had posted a photo the day before, a brunch spread with quiche, mimosas, her and Travis sitting with Mom and Dad. The caption read, "Always grateful for family." I wasn't in it, not just physically. I wasn't tagged, mentioned, anything. Even Grandma's neighbor had commented, "Where's Deline? Miss seeing her." No one replied. Scrolling down, I noticed older photos where I had been tagged were now just gone. The birthday dinner, the 4th of July cookout where I brought the giant flag cake. Christmas morning when I fixed the garbage disposal before brunch, deleted or maybe just hidden. It felt surgical, like being snipped out of a scrapbook page with those fancy scissors Marjorie used to collect. I stared at the screen until it blurred, then shut my phone off and stood. There was no reason to cry over this. Not really. No one died. No one yelled. This wasn't some dramatic betrayal. It was just slow, quiet erasure. Later that night, I pulled out my old leather-bound notebook from the drawer next to my bed. I hadn't written in it in months, maybe longer. The pages still smelled faintly like peppermint from an ancient lip balm I kept inside the front pocket. I started writing. Not poetry, not a rant, just facts. Words I couldn't say out loud. She thinks I'm embarrassing. They erase me one tag at a time. I used to be someone they thanked. Now I'm someone they tolerate. Barely. I flipped back a few pages. One entry dated over a year ago caught my eye. It was from the week Marjorie got accepted into grad school. Thank you for everything. I couldn't do this without you. Her handwriting was looped and soft, scribbled on a post-it note she'd left in my glove box after I drove 6 hours to help her move. I ran my fingers over the ink until it smudged slightly. Then I closed the journal and whispered into the dark, "Yeah, apparently you can." I left the journal on my nightstand and stayed in bed longer than usual the next morning. It wasn't that I was tired. My body was used to long hours, but something in me felt still. The kind of stillness that settles in after you've stopped making excuses for people. By noon, I was at the shop. I didn't have customers booked that afternoon, just a couple of oil filters to reorder and some paperwork to catch up on. I brewed coffee, booted up my laptop, and sat down at my desk in the office that doubled as a storage closet. That's when I noticed the envelope. It had come with the morning mail, and sat between a parts invoice and a tire catalog, plain white, no return address beyond Lexington Higher Education Foundation. I tore it open with a screwdriver tip. Dear Miss Calloway, we would like to formally thank you for your generous contribution to our 2023 Academic Merit Fund. Your support has helped students like Marjorie Calloway thrive in their continued educational pursuits. I stopped reading. Marjorie. I flipped the page over. There it was, her name bolded in the announcement section. Recipient of the 2023 Honor Scholarship sponsored by Miss Deline Calloway. I blinked. My fingers tightened around the paper. I'd never filled out anything for that foundation. Never made a public donation. I'd paid her tuition, sure, quietly, monthly. But this, they made it sound like I'd raised a banner, stood behind a podium, only I hadn't been there, and no one had told me this existed. I stood abruptly, the office chair scraping behind me. It didn't make sense. Not at first. I thought maybe it was an administrative error. Someone had added my name by mistake, but deep down I already knew. This wasn't random. Someone used my name on purpose. Back in the fall, Marjorie had texted me saying she needed a scan of my ID for a FAFSA emergency. Something about verifying her independent status. I didn't think twice. I'd been helping her for years. I dug through my email archives and found it within seconds. There it was in my sent folder. ID, signature, everything. Staring at that old email made my stomach twist. It was the kind of twist that comes when you realize you weren't just overlooked, you were used. I opened my laptop and started searching. If this scholarship existed, it had to be public somewhere. Sure enough, within minutes, I found it. A press release from the university's donor banquet. The headline read, "Top donors honored for their support of student excellence." There was a slideshow embedded at the bottom. I clicked through fast at first, then slower when I saw familiar faces. Slide 14 stopped me cold. There she was, my mother, standing at a podium accepting a plaque. The caption beneath it, Mrs. Maine Calloway, accepting on behalf of the Calloway family in honor of their daughter's scholarship gift. Not my name, not my gift, just the family. The bile that rose in my throat wasn't rage. Not yet. It was disbelief. I'd funded my sister's education for nearly 3 years. Quietly, consistently, I'd done it to give her a shot she couldn't afford herself. And now they had the nerve to polish it up and pass it off as some noble family effort. I sat down hard, staring at the screen. Then I clicked on the event video. Mom was smiling wide, wearing the blue blazer she only pulled out for weddings and court dates. She said things like, "We believe in supporting our youth." And "We always knew Marjorie was meant for more." I didn't exist in that speech. Not even a passing mention. I leaned back in my chair and stared at the ceiling. This wasn't about money anymore. This was erasure. First from Easter, then the group chat, then the family photos, now from my own act of generosity. They weren't just pushing me out of the picture. They were cropping me out of the story entirely. Back at my desk, I pulled open my banking app. I'd kept the tuition payments on autopilot for so long, I barely noticed them leave my account anymore. Tuition, books, housing. I tapped over to recurring transfers. There it was, scheduled for the 5th of each month. Next payment, $2,250. I stared at it for a long time. One tap could freeze the whole thing. No warning, no explanation, just like they'd done to me. I didn't hit cancel. Not yet. But I hovered. My thumb was steady, and for the first time in weeks, so was my heart. That night, I left the banking app open on my screen, the cursor still hovering over the cancel button. I didn't click it. Not yet. But something had shifted. The kind of shift you don't always recognize until it catches up with you days later. Like a slow crack in a windshield finally spreading all the way across. The next morning, I ran out of brake fluid in the garage. I'd placed a wholesale order last week, so I swung by the local supplier to grab it. I keep a company credit card for shop expenses. Basic stuff, parts, fluids, inspection tools, nothing fancy. I slid it across the counter like I always did. The guy behind the counter swiped it, frowned, swiped again. Then he looked up at me, awkward. "Sorry, Del. It's not going through." I blinked. That can't be right. Try it again. He did. Still nothing. I paid in cash, grabbed my receipt, and walked out with the box in hand, heartbeat picking up with every step. Something was wrong. Really wrong. Back at the shop, I logged into my personal credit portal. I didn't even finish my coffee before the screen loaded and I saw it. Outstanding balance, $3,814,270. New card issued under my name. Charges over the last 2 months. Flights, Sephora, wine bars in Louisville. I hadn't flown anywhere in over a year. I hadn't bought perfume since Christmas. I couldn't remember the last time I sipped wine that didn't come from a twist cap. I pulled up the detailed statement. One charge was a stay at a boutique hotel downtown. The same weekend, I had a transmission replacement emergency in the shop. Another was a purchase from an upscale salon. Hair extensions, lashes, a color job. The shipping address linked to the card. Travis's apartment, not mine. And just like that, the pattern came into full view. Marjorie didn't just lean on me for tuition. She was living off me. She had quietly stepped into my financial shoes. One purchase, one lie, one forged form at a time. I sat there in the dim light of my office, the door half shut, the quiet humming of the garage's air compressor somewhere behind me. I stared at the numbers, the dates, the receipts, feeling something between fury and humiliation start to rise. I hadn't even noticed. I opened another browser tab and searched for small business credit scores. Then I clicked into mine. It had dropped 72 points since February. That explained the call I got last week when I tried applying for a small renovation loan to expand the shop. The bank had stalled, told me there were outstanding issues and to check back in 30 days. I didn't think much of it then. I do now. I ran a trace on the mailing address, confirmed the cross streets. Travis's name was on the lease. I recognized the complex, bougie place with valet trash and those little community libraries on every corner. I scrolled through my contacts, stopping at my bank rep's name. I didn't press call. Not yet. Instead, I pulled screenshots, statements, fraud alerts, credit notices, every receipt I could find. I created a folder and emailed it to myself just in case. Back home, I heated up leftover chili and sat on the couch, my laptop beside me. The apartment was quiet, too quiet. It made my thoughts louder. This wasn't just about Marjorie anymore, or Easter, or even the scholarship. This was theft. This was erasure. This was betrayal with a price tag and my name on the receipt. I opened a draft message on my phone. Mom, I need to talk to you about the credit card and everything else. I stared at it, reread it. My thumb hovered over send, but I didn't send it because I already knew what would happen. They deflect, spin it, turn it into a misunderstanding, call me sensitive, accuse me of blowing things out of proportion, just like always. So instead, I backspaced slowly, watching each letter disappear until the message was gone. Then I locked my phone, leaned back into the couch, and let my silence do the talking. They won't hear it. They'll spin it like always. Friday came and went like fog on glass. Quiet, still, and hard to wipe off. I couldn't focus at work. Every time the phone buzzed, I thought it might be her or worse, Mom. Instead, it was Travis. He showed up just after 6, pulling into the lot behind the shop in his silver Subaru. I was tightening a bolt on a customer's front axle when I heard the tires crunch over gravel. He stepped out, holding a small cardboard box like it was ticking. Hey, he said, voice low, unsure. Is now a bad time? I wiped my hands on a rag and straightened. Depends. Are you about to make my day worse? He offered a strange smile and held out the box. This came to my place. It had your name on it, but Marjorie said it was a mix-up. I took it. The return label read Lux Skincare. I didn't use Lux. I didn't even know what Lux was, but the last name printed under my first, my own. I didn't say anything. Just motioned for him to follow me inside. The office smelled like warm motor oil and day-old coffee. I opened the box while Travis stood awkwardly in the doorway. Inside were 2 glass jars, anti-aging serums, both $119 apiece. A receipt tucked under the bubble wrap confirmed the shipping address. His apartment. Travis leaned on the doorframe. You didn't send that to yourself? I shook my head. He watched me for a long beat, then sat down. She said, your parents were paying her tuition. She said, you were kind of not around much. I pulled open my drawer, grabbed a folder, and dropped it on the desk in front of him. You should see this. Credit statements, scholarship letters, copies of receipts, bank emails. It was all there. I didn't explain. I didn't have to. His eyes moved slowly over each page, the color draining from his face. This is a lot, he said finally, voice hollow. She used my info. She forged my signature. My mother accepted a plaque meant for me like she earned it. I paused, jaw clenched. I'd been paying for everything. Not them, me. He leaned back like someone had pulled the floor out from under him. She lied to me, he whispered. About all of it. She lies like it's air, I said flatly. She doesn't even flinch anymore. Travis ran a hand through his hair. I had no idea. Yeah, I murmured. That's the point. He stood up slowly. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything. Just don't pretend you didn't see it. He hesitated. Are you going to tell her I know? I looked up at him. Not yet. He gave a slight nod, then turned and left without another word. I sat there for a long time, staring at the receipts scattered across my desk, heart pounding against the weight of years I'd spent pretending this kind of betrayal was normal. That night, I got the call. Mom. Her name blinked on my phone screen just after 9. I answered on the third ring, bracing myself. "Deline, sweetheart," she began syrupy sweet. "How are you holding up?" I didn't respond. She continued. "I heard there's been confusion. Maybe some tension between you and your sister." "Tension?" I snapped. "You mean the credit fraud? The lies? The fact she's used my name and money like they're hers?" There was a pause. Then, in the calmest tone she could fake, she said, "Let's not blow things out of proportion." I almost laughed. "You knew, didn't you?" I said. "Marjorie's under so much pressure," she deflected. "This isn't like her. You know that." I pressed my fingers against my temple. "It's exactly like her. And you've let her get away with it her whole life. She's just trying to survive." "So am I, Mom," I snapped. "And I'm tired of doing it with one hand tied behind my back while she rides on my shoulders." Silence stretched between us. Then she sighed. "You've always been so emotional." And there it was. The dismissal, the gaslight, the same script they always used when I dared to speak up. I ended the call without another word. Back in the garage, alone under the buzz of the flickering shop light, I picked up my phone again, typed one sentence, one chance. "Tell Travis everything or I will." I hit send and watched the little delivered check mark appear. Then I set the phone down, walked to the corner cabinet, and pulled out the dusty manila folder I hadn't touched in over a year. Inside was the original account authorization form, the one I used to set up her tuition autopay, the same one I was about to destroy. Saturday morning started like any other. The garage opened at 9 and the crew rolled in with coffee cups and playlists. The smell of grease and burnt toast from the deli next door mingled in the air. I was under the hood of a '97 Bronco, humming along to a Stevie Nicks song when I heard the front bay door slam open. Then her voice. "You froze my card. Are you out of your mind?" "Marjorie." I hit my head on the hood latch as I jerked upright. My entire crew stopped what they were doing. Even Kenny, who never takes out his earbuds, turned to look. Customers froze mid-conversation. One man holding a donut actually dropped it. She stomped into the center of the shop in heels too tall for asphalt and raged too loud for reason. Her face was red, eyes glossy, hair pulled into one of those buns that screamed chaos. "You think you're clever?" she spat. "Travis knows. Mom's furious. You humiliated me." I glanced at Louise, my junior tech, who was already pulling out his phone, not subtly. "Do you want to do this here?" I asked, wiping my hands on a rag, keeping my voice low. "You already did this here?" she shrieked. "I got declined trying to check into a hotel this morning, like some broke con artist. Do you have any idea what that felt like?" "Probably a lot like what it felt like getting denied a car loan for a business expansion," I said. "Because someone ran up charges under my name and trashed my credit." She blinked. Then she tried to recover. "It wasn't like that." I stepped forward. "No. What was it like, Marjorie?" "Fraud adjacent. Accidentally stealing. I gave you years of my money, my trust, my silence. You wore it like perfume." Someone in the back whispered, "Sheesh." Marjorie glanced around, saw phones up, eyes on her. Her voice lowered, but her venom stayed. "You've always hated that I have more." That made me laugh. "You have more what?" "More shame, more audacity. You stole from me, lied to everyone, and you expected me to keep funding your life like some invisible bank account with no PIN number and no limits." She shook her head. "You're just bitter. You never got out of this dump." I raised my voice clear and steady. "No, Marjorie. I built this dump. With busted knuckles and long nights and no help from you, you don't get to walk in here and spit on it." The silence after that was thick. Finally, Louise spoke. "I got the whole thing." I nodded once. "Good." Marjorie's mouth opened, then shut. She turned and stormed out, slamming the door behind her so hard the glass rattled. 10 minutes later, Travis showed up. He looked tired, like someone who hadn't slept or shaved in 2 days. He walked past the front desk holding an envelope, folded and crumpled like it had been stuffed in a pocket for hours. He handed it to me without a word. I opened it. A letter creased, stained, torn in one corner. The university scholarship letter addressed to me. My name, my donation, my thanks. He finally spoke. I found it in her trash. I looked at him. She didn't even shred it. She didn't even read it, he replied. I asked her about it. She said it was just some donor thing Deline got weird about. I nodded, pressing my lips together. She didn't even try to lie. Well, he added, eyes dull. I set the letter down. Thank you for bringing it. He paused. You were right. Too late now, I said not unkindly, just final. That night, I didn't pour a drink. I didn't cry. I didn't call anyone to vent. I sat at my desk in my apartment, flipped open my laptop, and logged into the university payment portal. The tuition autopay still sat there like a ticking bomb, waiting to go off again in 4 days. I clicked edit, then delete payment method. A red warning popped up. This action is irreversible. Are you sure? I didn't blink. Yes, I clicked it. And for the first time in years, I exhaled long, full, and clean. It felt like breathing real air after months of being underwater. The silence after I clicked yes didn't feel empty. It felt earned, clean, like the absence of something rotting. The next morning, I woke up before sunrise, opened the windows, and let the air in. It was crisp with spring, and for the first time in what felt like months, I made coffee without checking my bank account or bracing for another betrayal. But peace never lasts long when you're dealing with people who only know control through chaos. 3 days later, I found a letter in my mailbox. Real paper, blue ink, careful cursive that I recognized instantly. Maine's handwriting. My mother still believed in the power of pen over text. Especially when she wanted to seem warm, honest. Deline, families argue. We fight. We forgive. It's what we do. Come by next Sunday. I'll make that lemon tart you love. Let's talk like grown-ups. There was even a little heart drawn at the end of her name. If I hadn't lived 34 years in that woman's orbit, I might have melted at the sugar. Instead, I folded the note neatly and slid it into the drawer with the expired coupons and half-dead pens. Later that afternoon, I stopped at Sweet Hollow Cafe to grab a sandwich. A woman in a pastel cardigan smiled at me from the line. Mrs. Palmer, she lived 2 doors down and had given out cinnamon cookies last Christmas. Oh, honey, she said, reaching to pat my arm. I'm so sorry to hear what happened with Marjorie. I froze mid-reach for the napkins. Sorry to hear what? She tilted her head with that sympathetic frown Southern women perfect by age 50. About how things fell apart between you two. Maine told me it's been rough. She said you've been struggling a little, jealous, lashing out. I blinked. She said you cut off Marjorie's school funds over some personal grudge that you're under stress. But don't worry, she whispered like she was sharing a family secret. We all go through hard seasons. I told her, you just need grace. It hit me like a slap made of honey. I smiled tight. Thanks, Mrs. Palmer. Then I turned, walked out of the cafe without my sandwich, and sat in my truck until my hands stopped shaking. She'd done it. Maine had pulled her favorite move, wrapped cruelty in concern, coded shame and sympathy, and served it to the neighbors before I could even finish catching my breath. She wanted to play the wounded matriarch. Paint me as unstable, bitter, the broken sibling who couldn't handle her sister's success. They never wanted the truth. Just a better narrative. Later that night, I sat at the table flipping through old photos on my phone and one stopped me. A shot from the scholarship banquet 2 years ago, the one I didn't attend. I hadn't known I was even supposed to be there. But there she was, Maine, dressed in pearls, holding a plaque, beaming like she'd earned it herself. The caption on the university's Facebook page read, Mrs. Calloway attending in honor of the family donor. not a donor. Not even the daughter who donated. The family, no mention of me. I set the phone down and laughed, dry and hollow. She never wanted a daughter who rebuilt carburetors and smelled like engine oil. She wanted a daughter who fit into pearls and posed for plaques. So I wrote, not to her, not to Marjorie. I opened my social media account and drafted a post. No names, no drama, just a photo of the scholarship letter and a single sentence. When you're erased by your own, write your name back in ink. I hit post. At first, silence, then slow likes, a few comments, one from a former classmate. I always knew you were the backbone. Another from a neighbor about damn time. The rest was quiet, but not the kind that felt lonely. It felt still. I powered off my phone, walked to the kitchen, and poured myself a glass of water. Then, standing in the dark of my own apartment, I whispered into the stillness, let them come now. The next morning arrived with no fury, no fallout, just quiet. Not the kind that weighed you down, but the kind that made you think, maybe I made it out alive. I opened the curtains slowly, letting sunlight paint golden lines across my living room floor. I poured coffee, stronger than usual, and sat on the couch with my legs tucked underneath me. The house felt still, but not sad. Before touching my phone, I did something I hadn't done in months. I pulled out the old photo box, the one I kept in the closet under the toolbox, behind the dusty tax folders and extra spark plugs. The first picture that surfaced was us as kids. Me in overalls holding a wrench. Marjorie beside me in a tutu skirt, pouting because I wouldn't let her use the socket set like it was a toy. Mom had labeled it in Sharpie. Deline and Marjorie, opposites forever. I set it aside and opened my phone, scrolling back through our old messages. Birthday greetings, screenshots of her grades, emojis, casual updates, the usual stuff between sisters who didn't live together but still tried. Then there were the ones that hurt more. Thanks again for helping me with tuition. You're my hero. Or I owe you forever, Del. Forever, huh? Apparently forever had a shorter shelf life than I'd thought. I tapped out of messages and opened the university's billing portal again. Her name was still listed on my payment profile. Tuition, books, meal plans. All filed neatly under authorized user. I clicked into the settings. A pending payment sat scheduled for the following Friday. $2,900 for spring enrollment. The system prompted a warning. Removing this method will affect student enrollment status. Continue. I didn't blink. Yes. Delete. There was no confirmation page, just a final flash of white and the quiet refresh of the screen now absent of my card. Done. If this meant she got unenrolled, she'd have to deal with it. She could explain it to the registrar, to her loan officer, to herself. I closed the laptop and sat back, waiting, not in guilt, not in fear, just an expectation, like a tide I knew would come in eventually. It took less than 3 hours. The first notification came as a missed call, then a text. Marjorie, did you cancel the payment? Marjorie, are you serious right now? Marjorie, I'm going to lose everything. You don't get to do this. I didn't answer. Then came an email. Her subject line was all caps. You're ruining my life. I didn't open it. Then a voicemail from Nain. Deline, she began in that voice she saved for obituaries and bank managers. I just spoke to Marjorie. What you've done, it's not just cruel, it's vindictive. You're hurting your sister's future out of some childish resentment. I waited until the message ended before calling her back. She picked up on the second ring, her breath tight like she was expecting a storm. You're ruining her life, she repeated. No, I said calmly. She did that herself. Click. Later that afternoon, I found out through Travis. He left a note in her handwriting on my windshield that he had moved out. Just packed his stuff, dropped her key on the counter, and drove to Cincinnati to stay with his cousin. The note read, "You tried to tell me I should have listened. I'm sorry." I folded it once and slipped it into my glove box. That evening, the sun dipped slow behind the trees, casting long shadows across my balcony. I sat outside with a glass of ginger ale, watching the clouds shift. My phone, usually a grenade of notifications, sat face down and still. It shouldn't feel this good to finally be done, I whispered. But it did, and I let it. Easter morning came soft and slow, like a breath I didn't have to hold anymore. The streets were quiet, except for the distant bell of St. Luke's ringing out across the rooftops. Most homes in Lexington were already bustling with family noise, ham in the oven, dresses zipped, bow ties crooked. But my shop was still. No scent of cinnamon rolls, no floral centerpieces, just motor oil, faint gasoline, and a silence I had grown to crave. I unlocked the side door to the garage out of habit more than need. The place was closed, but I wanted the comfort of routine. Coffee brewed in the corner, the hum of the fluorescent lights overhead, the rhythmic clink of tools as I tidied the bench. The quiet wasn't empty, it was mine. I sat on the rolling stool by Bay 3, sipping from my chipped mug, and watched a lone leaf float across the concrete floor. No one was texting, no one was demanding, no one was expecting me to smile through it. For once, there was no invitation to be excluded from. And weirdly, that was its own kind of freedom. Later that afternoon, as the sun lifted higher and warmth touched the shop's steel beams, my inbox pinged. An email from the university. Sponsor information updated. No current payer on file for Marjorie Calloway. Attached was a notification that tuition was now overdue. No automatic extension. No deferment filed. I barely had time to close it before another one came in. A fraud alert from the bank. An attempt had been made to charge a flight to my cancelled card. The decline had already been issued, but the attempt was there. A final pull at a cord I had already cut. She still hadn't realized it wasn't hers anymore. Travis, I heard from the grapevine, had packed Marjorie's remaining boxes and dropped them on Mom's porch with no note, no warning, just walked away like someone finally freeing themselves from the gravity of someone else's orbit. That night, my phone buzzed again. A long message from Nain. We're still your family. Don't let one mistake ruin everything. You've always been strong. Don't become bitter. I stared at it a long while, then typed. One mistake didn't ruin everything. 100 silences did. I hit send. That was it. No punctuation, no apology, just truth. The next morning, In showed up. No text ahead, no dramatic knock. She stood in my doorway holding 2 coffees and a paper bag of warm biscuits. Didn't feel like letting you spend Easter weekend alone, she said simply. We sat on my back stoop watching the neighborhood cats dart between fences. How you holding up? She asked gently, not prying, not pretending. I took a slow breath, nodded. Better than I ever thought I could. She smiled and passed me the cinnamon biscuit. You've always been the one who fixed what was broken. This time I didn't correct her. 3 weeks passed. Spring rolled in for real. The dogwoods bloomed outside the shop windows, and we had to open the bays early each morning just to let the air move. The garage was busier than ever. I hired a second tech, Lisa, sharp with diagnostics and quicker than most guys I'd trained. We knocked out jobs in half the time and customers started showing up just to ask if the lady who fixed their brakes was available again. On a Tuesday morning, a little girl, maybe 6, came in with her mom for an oil change. She handed me a folded piece of notebook paper with a crayon drawing on the front. A lopsided car sat on top of a castle and underneath it read, Miss Deline's Car Castle. I laughed. Really laughed. Then I pinned it to the corkboard in my office right beside the folded scholarship letter. The one with my name that had almost been erased. Not anymore. The ink had dried and it was staying. And this time the name on the plaque is mine. Just mine. Healing doesn't always look like a big turning point. It doesn't always arrive with a breakdown or breakthrough. Sometimes healing just shows up quietly. It can look like a full night of sleep after weeks of anxiety. It can sound like your own breath when you finally stop holding it in. It can feel like peace, not because something dramatic happened, but because you've stopped waiting for someone else's permission to let go. I used to think loyalty meant staying silent. I believed that being a good daughter, a good sister, a good friend meant not rocking the boat, even if that boat was sinking. I thought love meant shrinking myself to make room for other people's comfort, even if it made me disappear. But here's the truth. I've come to learn the hard way. Silence isn't love. Silence is the soil where resentment grows. It's where truth gets buried and pain gets passed down like an heirloom. When you finally speak up, when you finally say enough, you risk losing people. You risk being called selfish, dramatic, difficult. You might hear that you've changed as if that's a bad thing. But here's what they won't tell you. In losing them, you find you. The version of you that doesn't shrink, doesn't hide, and doesn't apologize for needing honesty and respect.